Hello, and we have one of the finest stories that you will ever come across, and that is the paper menagerie. Menagerie पहले explain कर देते हैं. This was a kind of a precursor to the zoos. Zoos के पहले, before zoos became an idea, the rich people used to hold wild animals in captivity. तो जो collection होता था wild animals का, that was called a menagerie. If you have read Mowgli or if you have seen that serial, इसमें एक character था बघीरा, the Black Panther. He escaped from a menagerie. All right. So, acha, by the way, before we start, as usual, the instructions, please download, please install, please get all the free material that you can, and the writer. Ken Liu sir की कहानी है यार, मतलब the way he wrote it, the way he's explaining it, the way he's moving to and fro from a sort of imagination to reality, and amazing emotions throughout. Theme of the story is बहुत सारी चीजें कवर करता है, but ideally it talks about discrimination and a crisis of identity. Now, the story is narrated in first person by a boy called Jack, and Jack is from the father side he's American, from the mother side he's Chinese. तो ये जो mixed race की जो identity है उसके ऊपर एक कहानी लिखी हुई है, and how the boy feels and how he reacts and how the mother responds. We can straight away get down to the story. All right. धीरे धीरे पढ़ेंगे आराम से. One of my earliest memories starts with me sobbing. All right. जो मुझे बचपन की यादें हैं उनमें से जो सबसे पहले वाली यादें हैं उनमें से एक है कि मैं रो रहा था. Sobbing, I was crying. I refused to be soothed no matter what mom and dad tried. I refused to be soothed, refused to be consoled. चुप हो ही नहीं रहा था, regardless कि मम्मी और पापा क्या क्या try कर रहे थे. Normally, when a child cries, mom and dad they try to become jokers. They try to give you a sort of ice creams or something that you really like. बहुत सारा कुछ कोशिश करते हैं भाई तुम चुप हो जाओ. But ये बच्चा कह रहा है I refused to be soothed. मैं चुप नहीं हो रहा था. Dad gave up, as is the norm. पापा लोग उठ के बाहर चले जाते हैं and left the bedroom. But mom took me into the kitchen and sat me down at the breakfast table. Now, sat me down, यार, good English, use करना कभी ना कभी. Sat me down at the breakfast table. Can, I think it is look, translation किया हुआ यहाँ पे. Look, she said, as she pulled a sheet of wrapping paper from on top of the fridge. A sheet of wrapping paper जो gift trap करते हैं उस तरह के जो papers हैं, wrapping papers. For years, mom carefully sliced open the wrappings around Christmas gifts and saved them on top of the fridge in a thick stack. और ये I don't know if your mom does it or not, my wife surely does it. जो भी हमारे यहाँ गिफ्ट आता है उसका पेपर बहुत कायदे से काट के वो रख लेती है कि कहीं डॉटर के स्कूल में प्रोजेक्ट होगा उसमें काम आ जाएगा. द टिपिकल मिडिल क्लास अपब्रिंगिंग. हम कुछ नहीं फेंकते, पहले जीन्स आती है, फिर कट के शॉर्ट्स होती हैं, फिर कट के उनका कैरी बैग झोला बन जाता है, फिर वो पोछे में काम आती हैं, लेकिन हम छोड़ते नहीं है सात आखिरी दम तक. So that is what the lady has done. For years, mom carefully sliced open the wrappings around Christmas gifts and saved them on top of the fridge in a thick stack. She set the paper down, plain side facing up. जो कलर साइड है वो नीचे है, plain side ऊपर दिख रही है, and began to fold it. I stopped crying and watched her curious. All right. Now, a child stops crying the moment you can distract him or her. So, रो रहा है किसी बात पे. Finally, मम्मी ने उसको कलर्ड पेपर दिखा दिया, रख दिया, फोल्ड करना स्टार्ट कर दिया. So now he stops crying and he is suddenly curious कि मम्मी कर क्या रही है. She turned the paper over and folded it again. She pleated. तो जैसे आपकी चुटिया बनती है गर्ल्स की, तो pleated. Packed, tucked, rolled and twisted until the paper disappeared between her cupped hands. और इस तरह के हाथ उन्होंने बनाया, उसके बीच में पेपर गायब हो चुका था, दिख नहीं रहा था. Then she lifted the folded up paper packet to her mouth and blew into it like a balloon. फिर यहां तक लाके उन्होंने उसमें हवा फूकी जैसे आप बलून फुलाते हैं. Can, she said, look, a tiger. She put her hands down on the table and let go. A little paper tiger stood on the table, the size of two fists placed together. The size of two fists, बच्चा है तो उसके फिस्ट होंगे छोटे छोटे, तो उस साइज का वो पेपर टाइगर मम्मी ने बनाया. The skin of the tiger was the pattern on the wrapping paper. Obviously, wrapping paper से बना है तो पैटर्न वही रहेगा. White background with red candy canes and green Christmas trees. प्लीज क्रिसमस गिफ्ट से जो रैपर्स थे वो मम्मी कलेक्ट करती थी, उसी का उन्होंने टाइगर बनाया. तो ऑब्वियसली जो टाइगर का जो स्किन है दैट विल बी व्हाट द पेपर कैरीड एज अ पैटर्न. I reached out to mom's creation. I reached out to mom's creation. मॉम ने जो पेपर टाइगर बनाया था इसको बच्चे ने पकड़ा. Its tail twitched, kind of moved, made a movement, and it pounced playfully at my finger. Now, this may be a child's imagination because the paper tiger is moving. It is responding to the touches. Okay? So, please understand, this is a child narrating. Yeah, a man narrating from his childhood. Its tail twitched and it pounced playfully at my finger. Roars. It growled. The sound somewhere between a cat and rustling newspaper. All right. तो जो cat sound होती है और जो paper tiger था, तो paper की जो sound होती है उसका mix करके एक sound आती है. I laughed, startled, surprised, shocked, or whatever, and stroked its back with my index finger. The paper tiger vibrated under my finger, purring. Now, purring is a sound that a tiger makes. Okay? And if you give a word to a particular sound, it is onomatopoeia, figure of speech. Meow, bhaw, bhaw, grr, grr. These are all examples of onomatopoeia. So, the tiger purred. Zijiao, Ziji, I don't know if I'm saying it the right way, but yes, mom said, this is called origami. This art of making animal structures from paper, that is called origami. Mom ने उसको explain किया. All right. I didn't know this at the time, but mom's breath was special. She breathed into her paper animals so that they shared her breath and thus moved with her life. This was her magic. Now the boy says, the narrator says that I didn't know this at the time. उस समय मुझे नहीं पता था, नहीं एहसास था, बट मम्मी जो थी ना वो इन जानवरों में जान फूकती थी. And they shared her breath and thus moved with her life. और जैसे जैसे मम्मी लाइफ में आगे बढ़ रही, काम कर रही, वैसे वैसे वो एनिमल्स भी मूव किया करते थे. दिस वॉज हर मैजिक. और ये था मम्मीज मैजिक. Dad had picked mom out of a catalog. Now, this is something that that may be difficult for us to understand because culturally हमें शायद इसका अंदाजा नहीं है that it was the process of buying a bride for yourself. Okay, और पर्पस वही होता था कि यार we'll get a female home, तो खाना बना लेंगी, बच्चे पाल लेंगी, कपड़े धो देंगी. Basically kind of housemaid जैसा उनको ट्रीटमेंट दिया जाता था. But I think out here the man is really sensible and loving, तो ऐसा नहीं है. Anyway, dad had picked mom out of a catalog. एक लिस्ट होगा ब्राइड्स का to be bought and sold. वहां से उन्होंने पिक किया. One time when I was in high school, I asked dad about the details. और जब थोड़ा बड़ा हुआ तो मैंने पापा से डिटेल्स पूछे कि पापा मतलब how did you get mom? He was trying to get me to speak to mom again. He was trying to get me to speak to mom again. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि बीच में अनबन हो चुकी है. The mom and the son, they are not talking. आपस में बातचीत बंद है. तो dad is trying कि बेटे को मना ले जाएं, बोले मम्मी से बात करो यार. He was trying to get me to speak to mom again. We don't know the background yet, but yeah, this can be guessed कि बातचीत नहीं हो रही है. He had signed up for the introduction service back in the spring of 1973. All right, back in the spring of 1973. Flipping through the pages steadily, he had spent no more than a few seconds on each page until he saw the picture of mom. और वो कैटलॉग चेक कर रहे थे, and he was like quickly going through it, and then he stopped when he saw the picture of his, the future wife or the mother of the narrator. I have never seen this picture. Dad described it. Mom was sitting in a chair, her side to the camera, wearing a tight green silk Shion gowns. I hope I get it right the next time. Anyway, her head was turned to the camera so that her long black hair was draped artfully over her chest and shoulder. She looked out at him with the eyes of a calm child. और आंखों में एक मासूमियत थी. उस तरह से वो पिक्चर से दिख रही थी. This may be a robe or something, yeah? Chinese dress. That was the last page of the catalog I saw. उसके बाद डैड ने आगे कैटलॉग नहीं बढ़ाया, वहीं पे रुक गए. The catalog said she was 18 loved to dance, and spoke good English because she was from Hong Kong. None of these facts turned out to be true. He was 18, not true. Loved to dance, not true. And spoke good English because she was from Hong Kong, not true. So none of the details that were given in the catalog turned out to be true. Sab jhoot. He wrote to her, and the company passed their messages back and forth. Finally, he flew to Hong Kong to meet her. So thoda correspondence hua between the company and the man and, of course, the woman. And finally, wo Hong Kong gaye milne ke liye. The people at the company had been writing her responses. She didn't know any English other than hello and goodbye. And the people at the company, which means the company which was doing this business of maybe human trafficking, selling brides, they were writing in English on behalf of the girl. The girl knew nothing except hello and goodbye. What kind of woman puts herself in a catalog so that she can be bought? The high school me thought I knew so much about everything. Contempt felt good like wine. And now this lad is literally fuming over this. He is not able to figure out why this has happened. What kind of woman? I mean, he's straight away putting a question on the character of his mother. What kind of woman puts herself in a catalog so that she can be bought? The high school me thought I knew so much about everything. Contempt felt good. This hatred, it felt good. Nasha tha contempt ka, hatred ka, like a wine. Instead of storming into the office to demand his money back, he paid a waitress at the hotel restaurant to translate for them. But dad was cool. Did not go and ask for money. He waited at the restaurant. He met the lady at the restaurant, asked the waitress that please translate what she says. She would look at me, her eyes halfway between scared and hopeful, while I spoke. And when the girl began translating what I said, she'd start to smile slowly. तो पहले तो ऐसे बस देख रही है, समझ नहीं आ रहा. फिर जब ट्रांसलेशन हो रहा है, then she started smiling. He flew back to Connecticut, वापस आए वहां से, हांगकांग से, and began to apply for the papers for her to come to him. I was born a year later in the year of the tiger. और अपनी वाइफ को यूएस लेके आते हैं, एक साल बाद बेबी होता है in the year of the tiger. At my request, mom also made a goat, a deer, and a water buffalo out of wrapping paper. Yes, don't forget the paper menagerie. ठीक, तो पहले सबसे पहले टाइगर बना और टाइगर के बाद goat, deer, water buffalo out of wrapping paper. They would run around the living room while Lahu, this was the name of the tiger, chased after them, growling. When he caught them, he would press down until the air went out of them and they became just flat folded up pieces of paper. जैसे टाइगर हंट करता है तो it grabs the prey by its neck and suffocates. तो जो हवा निकाल दी भाई. I would then have to blow into them to reinflate them so they could run around some more. And then the kid picked these other animals up and again inflated them so that they could again run around. Sometimes the animals got into trouble. Once the water buffalo jumped into a dish of soy sauce on the table at dinner. अब आप लिक्विड में कूद पड़े हैं, वो भी थोड़ा dense. He wanted to wallow like a real water buffalo. I picked him out quickly, but the capillary action जब when you studied biology, तो वो प्लांट्स में ना कैपिलरी एक्शन पढ़ाते हैं, फिजिक्स में भी पढ़ाते हैं. ठीक, यहाँ पानी नीचे से ऊपर मूव करना शुरू हो जाता है. Okay, the capillary action had already pulled the dark liquid high up into his legs. The sauce softened legs would not hold him up and he collapsed onto the table. तो ये जो अपना भाई buffalo था, water buffalo, ये एक बार कूद गया soy sauce में, and soy sauce के चलते जो legs हैं वो soften हो गई. Remember, it's just a paper toy, जो of course liquid tolerate नहीं कर सकता. But his legs became crooked. I dried him out in the sun. But his legs became crooked after that and he ran around with a limp. तो ड्राई करके ना उसको वापस खड़ा तो कर दिया, but the legs they got crooked, टेढ़े हो गए. And उसके बाद the water buffalo could walk only with a limp. लंगड़ा के चल रहे हैं. Mom eventually wrapped his legs in saran wrap so that he could wallow to his heart's content. Not just in soy sauce. Soy sauce में नहीं जाने का. Also, lahu, okay. like to trouble sparrows when he and I played in the backyard. But one time, a cornered bird, ghir gayi thi, but tiger hai aur bird ghir gayi hai, hit back in desperation, and because it was desperate, तो उसने वापस counter attack मार दिया tiger पे. He whimpered and winced as I held him. He avoided birds after that. और जो मार खाया है वो चिड़िया से, उसके बाद से उसने birds से पंगा लेना छोड़ दिया. And then one day I saw a TV documentary about sharks and asked mom for one of my own. फिर इन्होंने देखा sharks और मम्मी को बोला मामा एक shark book बनाओ यार, papers. He made the shark but he flapped about on the table unhappily. अब shark तो बना दिया और उसको टेबल पे रखा हुआ है तो unhappy है. I filled the sink with water and put him in. He swam around and around happily. However, after a while it became soggy. वो भी soften हो गया because paper है और water में है. And translucent, और मतलब across दिखना, shine वाइन आ गया उसमें, across दिखाई पड़ने लगा. And slowly sank to the bottom, the folds coming undone. और folds coming undone, जितने भी folds से उन्होंने मम्मी ने बनाया था वो सारे खुल गए और अब piece of paper हो गया. I reached in to rescue, बचाने के लिए, and rescue him, and all I ended up with was a wet piece of paper. And all I ended up with was a piece of paper. बेटा keep an eye on all these terms. ये फाइनली जाके आपके prepositional phrases, phrasal verbs, ये भी बहुत टेंशन क्रिएट करते हैं besides the vocabulary. So anything that you find, the structure of the sentence that is new to you, just make it your own. Note it down. तो बचा क्या इनके पास? A piece of wet paper. Mom made a new shark for me. नया बनाया. This time out of tin foil. भाई अब पानी से दिक्कत नहीं, tin foil से बना दिया. The shark lived happily in a large goldfish bowl. Lahu and I liked to sit next to the bowl to watch the tin foil shark chasing the goldfish. Lahu sticking his face up against the bowl on the other side so that I saw his eyes magnified to the size of coffee cups. अब वो through the glass आ रहा है, ठीक है, तो वो magnify हो गया है, staring at me from across the bowl. बच्चा है, बचपन की यादें कर रहा है कि एनिमल्स क्या किया करते थे और हम कैसे कैसे टाइम बिता रहे थे. When I was 10, we moved to a new house across. Okay, तो 10 साल के हो गए और अब नए घर में शिफ्ट करते हैं. Two of the women neighbors came by to welcome us, and as is the norm, जब आप कहीं ना कहीं जाते हैं, when you go to a new place, neighbors आते हैं out of curiosity, पता करने भाई साहब क्या करते हैं आप, कहाँ से आए हैं आप, ये सब. तो 2 women आती हैं. Dad served them drinks and then apologized for having to run off to utility company to straighten out the prior owner's bills. And as again खरीदा है किसी से तो उनको कुछ bills pending हैं, क्लियर करने हैं, तो डैड ने बोला कि आप लोग बैठो, चाय पियो, मैं आता हूं bills क्लियर करके. Make yourself at home. My wife doesn't speak much English, so don't think she's being rude for not talking to you. Language नहीं आती है तो silent ही रहेंगी. Please don't feel bad about it. It's not that she's being rude, just that she does not speak English. While I read in the dining room, mom unpacked in the kitchen. और अभी शिफ्ट हुए हैं तो मम्मी unpack कर रही है. The neighbors conversed. They were talking in the living room, not trying to be particularly quiet. The neighbors are talking and then they're talking loudly. They are not trying to be quiet. कि whisper कर लें या धीरे softly बात कर लें, वो जोर से ही बात कर रहे हैं. Probably they wanted these people to hear what they were talking about. He seems like a normal enough man. Why did he do that? Now one lady says that about his dad. To me, he seems like a normal man. उसने ऐसा क्यों किया? What? Something about the mixing never seems right. Mixing never seems right. Remember, dad is American, mom is Chinese, and this is a mix. The boy. The child looks unfinished. मतलब लग रहा है कि पूरी तरह से फॉर्म नहीं हुआ है, कुछ डिफॉर्म्ड है अभी तो. Planty eyes coming from the Chinese mother, white face coming from the American dad, a little monster. और वो कह रही है बच्चे को कि अभी थोड़ा सा डिफॉर्म्ड है, पूरा बना नहीं था ये ऐसे ही, और कैसा लगता है, like a little monster. Do you think he can speak English? तुम्हें लगता है इंग्लिश बोल पा रहा होगा? The women hushed. Then the women hushed. They went silent. After a while, they came into the dining room. Hello there. What's your name? Jack, I said. That doesn't sound very Chinesey. Okay. Now Jack happens to be more of an American name than. It doesn't sound that Chinesey. Mom came into the dining room then. फिर mom kitchen से निकल के dining room आती हैं. She smiled at the women. 3 of them stood in a triangle around me, smiling and nodding at each other with nothing to say until Dad came back. Now, एक दूसरे की लैंग्वेज नहीं आती है, तो बस एक दूसरे को देख के सर हिला रहे हैं, मुस्कुरा रहे हैं, saying nothing until the man comes back. Mark, one of the neighborhood boys, came over with his Star Wars action figures. Now there ये toys लेके आया है बंदा. Mark, एक neighborhood boy है, and he has come to Jack's place with his Star Wars collection. Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, जो sword है उसकी, lit up. And he could swing his arms and say in a tinny voice, use the force. I don't think the figure looked much like the real Obi-Wan at all. And the boy, when he looks at the toy, he says, यार ये लग तो नहीं रही नहीं उसके जैसा. Mark is seemingly quite proud of his possession. Jack is he's not impressed by the toy. Mark was disappointed by my response. Show me your toys. Mark ने देखा, अरे ये मेरे टॉयज को ऐसे बोल रहा है, अपने दिखा भाई क्या है तेरे पास ऐसा कमाल का. I didn't have any toys except my paper menagerie. जैक के पास कुछ था ही नहीं. मम्मी ने पेपर menagerie बनाई थी, वही इनके पास वाटर बफेलो एंड डियर एंड टाइगर ये सब था. I bought Rahul out from my bedroom. ये अपना टाइगर लेके निकले बेडरूम. By then he was very worn, मतलब पुराना, ओल्ड हो चुका था. ठीक है, पेपर ही तो था ना. Patched all over with tape and glue, evidence of the years of repairs mom and I had done on him. तो काफी सारा रिपेयर वर्क चल गया था अपने टाइगर के ऊपर. I sat him down on the coffee table. I could hear the skittering steps of other animals behind in the hallway. Timidly, opposite of bold, okay, so not bold. Timidly peeking into the living room. और ये पीछे से अपने वही वाटर बफेलो टाइगर एंड वाटर बफेलो एंड डियर एंड काउस जो भी कुछ बाकी एनिमल्स थे उनके चलने की आवाज सुन रहा था. वो हॉल में पीछे से झांक रहे थे. Zao, I said and stopped. I switched to English. This is Tiger. Cautiously, Lahao strode up and purred at Mark, sniffing his hands. And Tiger आया, उसने अपनी वो आवाजें निकाली और मार्क के हैंड्स स्निफ किए. Marx examined the Christmas wrap pattern of Lahao's skin. Remember the tree and the candy and all those? He doesn't look like a tiger at all. Your mom makes toys for you from trash. Now, ab dekho. The boy is mighty happy with what mom does. Mom's creation. To him, it was mom's creation, creativity, godlike. And this lad comes up and says, she makes toys for you from trash. Different perspectives of the same object. I had never thought of Lahao as trash, but looking at him now, he was really just a piece of wrapping paper. और ये पहला इंप्रेशन बच्चे पे पड़ता है कि यार ऐसा कोई मैजिक तो नहीं है तो बस piece of paper ही. Mark pushed Obi-Wan's head again. The lightsaber flashed. He moved his arms up and down, used the force. Lahao turned and pounced. उन्होंने अपनी तलवार चमकाई. यहाँ Lahao turned and pounced. Tiger reacted aggressively. Knocking the plastic figure off the table, it hit the floor and broke, and Obi-Wan's head rolled under the couch. और Obi-Wan भाई जो था गर्दन अलग हुई, सर नीचे रोल कर गया. Rawr, laughed and I joined him. Mark punched me hard. और गुस्से में Mark ने दिया घुसा इनको घुमा के. This was very expensive. You can't even find it in the stores now. It probably cost more than what your dad paid for your mom. Now, how does a child know this? The neighborhood is talking about. Remember those two women? They came to meet them on day one. The gossip goes around. And now this kid, Mark, he taunts Jack that it probably cost more than what your dad paid for your mom. I stumbled and fell to the floor. Lahao growled and leapt at Mark's face. Mark screamed, more out of fear and surprise than pain. Lahao was only made of paper after all. तो पेपर टाइगर था, कोई चोट थोड़ी सी लगनी थी उसको. Mark grabbed Lahao and his snarl was choked off. As Mark crumpled him in his hands and tore him in half, he balled up. दोनों को एक बॉल बनाया, 2 pieces of paper and threw them at. उठा के मेरे पे Lahao टुकड़ों टुकड़ों में वापस आ गए. Here's your stupid cheap Chinese garbage. And again, mom's creation, trash, and again, according to Mark, Chinese garbage. My fight with Mark didn't end there. Mark was popular at school. I never want to think again about the 2 weeks that followed. Now, Mark was popular, and by the looks of it, Mark was very arrogant and maybe a bully. So the next day, when Jack turned up at school, and over the next 2 weeks, what he suffered, he doesn't want to remember that. Mark ने शायद दोस्तों के साथ मिलके बहुत बुली किया, बहुत टॉन्ट मारे हैं. I came home that Friday at the end of the 2 weeks. Mom asked, how was school? I said, nothing, and went to the bathroom. I looked into the mirror. I looked nothing like her, nothing. And this is the point when those feelings of being discriminated against start to develop in Jack. And probably consciously or even subconsciously, he is finding the reason to be his mom, who was Chinese. I looked nothing like her, nothing. At dinner, I asked Dad, do I have a Ching face? Ching face? Chinese face? Small eyes. Dad put down his chopsticks. Even though I had never told him what happened in school, he seemed to understand. Now, parents की खास बात होती है, आप उनको बताएं या ना बताएं, उन्हें पता चल जाता है. They can smell it. They can figure it out. So though Jack did not tell his father what had happened at school over the past 2 weeks, Dad could figure it out. He knew. He closed his eyes and rubbed the bridge of his nose. No, you don't. Mom looked at Dad, not understanding. उनको तो इंग्लिश आती नहीं थी मम्मी को. She looked back at me. What does chink mean? English, I said. Speak English. She tried. What happened? I pushed the chopsticks and the bowl before me away. Stir-fried green peppers with 5-spice beef. We should eat American food. Now, maybe the other students, the other boys at school, they were passing comments and taunts because of his Chinese way of living. खाना भी Chinese खा रहा है, दिखता भी आधा Chinese है, मम्मी भी Chinese है, English बोल नहीं पाती है. A lot of cruelty being thrown at him. I pushed the chopsticks in the bowl before me away. Stir-fried green peppers with 5-spice beef. We should eat American food. Dad tried to reason. Dad ने logic दिया. A lot of families cook Chinese sometimes यार. बहुत सारी families हैं Chinese खाती हैं. Even in America, even the Americans. We are not other families. I looked at him. Other families don't have moms who don't belong. The other families don't have moms who do not appear to be Americans. My mom, she has been bought from Hong Kong. She does not belong here. So we are not other families. He looked away and then he put a hand on Mom's shoulder. I'll get you a cookbook. When Dad looked away, then he finally spoke to his wife. I'll get you a cookbook so that we prepare something that is besides the Chinese food that we eat. Mom turned to me. Food doesn't taste good. English, I said, raising my voice. Speak English. Mom reached out to touch my forehead, feeling for my temperature. Do you have a fever? I brushed her hand away. I'm fine. Speak English. I was shouting, speak English to him, Dad said to Mom. You knew this was going to happen someday. What did you expect? Mom dropped her hands to her sides. She sat, looking from Dad to me and back to Dad again. She tried to speak, stopped and tried again, and stopped again. You have to, Dad said. I've been too easy on you. Jack needs to fit in. Now the mom is facing the brunt of both the son and the dad. Dad says, मैंने कहा था अंग्रेजी सीखो. It is important. क्यों नहीं किया? And Jack needs to fit in. So you ought to improve yourself. Maybe I'll be strict with you in terms of this language that you need to learn. And mom is like, she doesn't understand what's gone wrong. Mom looked at him. If I say love, I feel here. She pointed to her lips. If I say I feel here. She put her hand over her heart. Now, very, very, very important line coming from Jack's mother. She says, if I say love, which is of course English, it is just the lips, no emotions. I can't feel that emotion. When I use my native language and say I, or in what's the manner it's pronounced in Chinese, I feel here. She put her hand over her heart. लेकिन जब मैं I बोलती हूं तो ये दिल से मेरे निकलता है. I can feel it here. But when I say love, it is just coming from my mouth. I don't feel it in my heart. Dad shook his head. You are in America. Don't forget you are in America. Mom hunched down in her seat. Mom seat में hunch हो जाती हैं. Looking like the water buffalo when Lahau used to pounce on him and squeeze the air of life out of him. और ऐसा लगा कि मम्मी के शरीर से जान निकल गई हो. He is not able to fathom what she is supposed to do to make these two people happy. And I want some real toys. और एक और हुक्म आया जैक का कि और ना मुझे पेपर वाले टाइगर बहुत हो गए. I want some real toys. Dad bought me a full set of Star Wars action figures. I gave Obi-Wan Kenobi to Mark. की मुंडी तो गई थी काउच के नीचे, तो उसको जाके नया वाला टॉय दे दिया. I packed the paper Menagerie in a large shoe box and put it under the bed. और सब वो पैक करके बफेलो, टाइगर, डियर सब शू बॉक्स में डाल के बेड के नीचे खिसका दिया. The next morning, the animals had escaped and taken over their old favorite spots in my room. I caught them all and put them back into the shoebox, taping the lid shut. But the animals made so much noise in the box that I finally shoved it into the corner of the attic as far away from my room as possible. Attic जो छत पे एक रूम होता है, स्टोर रूम टाइप का, तो वहां जाके फेंक के आ गया, क्योंकि वो अब उनको सील कर दिया था. They were not able to escape, but they were making a lot of noise. तो आंखों से दूर, दिमाग से दूर. If mom spoke to me in Chinese, I refused to answer her. And if mom spoke to me in Chinese, I refused to answer her. Now, beta, this is where the communication starts to break. And lack of communication creates havoc in any relationship. अगर communication ही नहीं है बेटा, तो relationship आगे चलनी ही नहीं है, चाहे जो हो जाए. तो मम्मी बेचारी चाइनीज बोल रही है, लड़का जवाब नहीं दे रहा है, तो communication क्या होगा? Slowly it will stop altogether. After a while, she tried to use more English, but her accent and broken sentences embarrassed me. I tried to correct her. Now, beta, please understand this. Every once in a while at this age, especially from 13 to 19, we all somehow get embarrassed because of our parents. We just start believe or think that they are not good enough. They are not worth taking around, meeting our friends. What will our friends say about them? Don't forget, they are the people who have brought you up. They're the people who will stand by your side whatever happens. And they don't ask anything in return. बदले में कुछ मांगते भी नहीं है. So just when next time you have a feeling of this embarrassment because of your parents, just control it. They are the most important people in your life, and they will remain the most important people in your life. Trust me. The embarrassment, अगर होता भी है तो उसको control करिए. They are good people, nice people. They always think good of you. And if they get angry at you, maybe the only reason is that they want you to be comfortable. तो उनको अगर ऐसा कुछ लगता है कि तुम कुछ ऐसा काम करो उससे फ्यूचर में दिक्कत होगा, that is when they panic. It's not because they are selfish, or it's not because they are not intelligent. They are, as parents, they are very intelligent. Thing is, maybe certain manners or mannerisms may not be according to the circle that you are moving in. But that doesn't make a difference. It's absolutely okay. Eventually, she stopped. But her accent and broken sentences embarrassed me. I tried to correct her, और मैं उनको सही भी कर रहा हूँ. Eventually, she stopped speaking altogether if I was around. अब मॉम बेचारी embarrassment से, डर से, घबराहट से, जब भी जैक आसपास होता ना तो बोलती ही नहीं थी यार कि छोड़ो अब नहीं बोलेंगे. Mom began to mime things if she needed to let me know something. And mom ने ना वो इशारों से बात करना शुरू कर दिया. जैसे हमारी मम्मियाँ होती बहुत सही, वहां से बोले आओ, ढूंढते रहो बेटा, वहां से बोले आओ. इंडियन मॉम्स आर गुड. वो रोती नहीं तुमको लेके, दो थप्पड़ मारे उनका मूड सही हो गया. ठीक, तो हाँ वहां से वो ले आना, अब समझते रहो कहां से क्या लाना है. ठीक है. Mom is miming. She tried to hug me the way she saw American mothers do on TV. I thought her movements exaggerated, uncertain, ridiculous, graceless. She saw that I was annoyed and stopped. पहले बातचीत बंद हुई और फिर फिजिकल शो ऑफ अफेक्शन होता है वो भी बंद हो गया, बिकॉज जैक एक नंबर का बदतमीज, एटलीस्ट इस पॉइंट तक. You shouldn't treat your mother that way, Dad said, but he couldn't look me in the eyes as he said it. तो डैड में भी कन्विक्शन नहीं था अपने बेटे को बोल पाने का कि यार ऐसे ट्रीट मत करो, बिकॉज समवेयर डैड ऑल्सो रियलाइज्ड और ही ऑल्सो फेल्ट दैट the lady could have been better. She could have at least spoken the language. Deep in his heart, he must have realized that it was a mistake to have tried to take a Chinese peasant girl and expect her to fit in the suburbs of Connecticut. और डीप डाउन शायद डैड को भी अपनी गलती का एहसास हो रहा था कि यार चाइनीज गरीब घर से किसी चाइनीज गर्ल से शादी करना शायद गलत हो गया यार. मॉम लर्न टू कुक अमेरिकन स्टाइल. आई प्लेड वीडियो गेम्स, आई स्टडीड फ्रेंच. भाई साहब, मम्मी चाइनीज है वो नहीं सीख पा रहे, फ्रेंच सीख रहे हैं. Every once in a while, I would see her at the kitchen table studying the plain side of a sheet of wrapping paper. Studying the plain side of a sheet of wrapping paper. Later, a new paper animal would appear on my nightstand and try to cuddle up to me. I caught them, squeezed them until the air went out of them, and then stuffed them away in the box in the attic. And mom ने toys बनाती थी, ये भाई साहब वापस उसकी हवा निकाल के attic में डब्बे में डालते थे. Mom finally stopped making animals when I was in high school. And high school तक आते आते, भाई first they stopped communicating verbally. Then there was no physical display of affection. And now toys भी नहीं बना रही. सारे रिश्ते actually मतलब जितने भी connections थे वो दोनों के बीच में टूटते चले जा रहे हैं. By then her English was much better, but I was already at that age when I wasn't interested in what she had to say, whatever language she used. As I said, when you are 16, 17, whatever your parents say, you're not bothered. ऐसा बकवास इनको समझ नहीं आ रही बात. लड़का भी उसी एज पे था. Dad and I stood, one on each side of mom, lying on the hospital bed. All right. अब यहां से कहानी स्विच मारती है. Dad and I stood, one on each side of mom, lying on the hospital bed. She was not yet even 40, but she looked much older. मम्मी की तबीयत खराब और बेड के एक साइड पे डैड और एक साइड पे जैक. For years, she had refused to go to the doctor for the pain inside her that she said was no big deal. All the moms in this world, especially in India, वो जब तक गिर नहीं जाएंगी तब तक डॉक्टर के पास नहीं आती. पता नहीं क्या है रीजन क्या है. They have a great capacity to endure pain and discomfort. Resilience, top quality these women have. For years, she had refused to go to the doctor for the pain inside her that she said was no big deal. By the time an ambulance finally carried her in, the cancer had spread far beyond the limits of surgery. There was no way back from it now. वो एक टर्मिनल डिजीज हो गया था और अब बस डेथ ही डेथ थी और कुछ नहीं. My mind was not in the room. It was the middle of the on-campus recruiting season, and I was focused on resumes, transcripts, and strategically constructed interview schedules. Ab just look at the insensitivity of this boy. Mom is on her deathbed, okay? And all this boy could think of was the resumes, the interviews, because placements were going on in his college. I schemed about how to lie to the corporate recruiters most effectively so that they'd offer to buy me. And अपने मन में वो scheme चला रहा है, मतलब he's planning and plotting that मैं क्या जाके वहां पे बोल दूं, सच या झूठ जो भी, so that I get this job. I understood intellectually that it was terrible to think about this while your mother lay dying. But that understanding didn't mean I could change how I felt. He knew, he realized that this is not right. But again, he could not change it. He kept thinking about his interviews. She was conscious. होश में तो थी. Dad held her left hand with both of his own. He leaned down to kiss her forehead. He seemed weak and old in a way that startled me. I realized that I knew almost as little about Dad as I did about Mom. देखिए, मॉम से तो लड़के सारे कम्युनिकेशन तोड़ ताड़ के बैठा हुआ था, तो मॉम से तो डिस्कम्फर्ट था तो पता चल रहा था. डैड के बारे में सोचा भी नहीं था. एंड नाउ व्हेन ही सॉ हिज डैड व्हाइल हिज मॉम इज ऑन द डेथ बेड, he realized that dad had grown old overnight, and it happens with people, with couples who are in love, who greatly care about each other. उनमें से एक को अगर कष्ट होता है तो दूसरे की भी उम्र अचानक से लगने लगता है बहुत ज्यादा हो गई है. And that is why it's very important for all of us to make sure that both the parents remain hale, hearty, healthy and happy with each other. अगर आपस में ही ना लड़ रहे हो तो अलग बात है. All right? हाँ. So now I realized कि यार डैड के बारे में भी मुझे ज्यादा नहीं पता था. It is only now that I realized that he has grown old overnight. Mom smiled at him. I'm fine. She turned to me, still smiling. I know, you have to go back to school. Her voice was very weak and it was difficult to hear her over the hum of the machines hooked up to her. When you are in the ICU, there are a lot of machines और सब में आवाजें आ रही हैं. तो the frail lady, about to die lady, voice में इतनी ताकत नहीं है. तो it was difficult for the boy, for Jack to even hear. Go, don't worry about me. This is not a big deal. Just do well in school. She is about to die. And she still says, it's not a big deal. Just go and do well in school. I reached out to touch her hand because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. Politically क्या करेक्ट होता है ना, सोशली क्या करेक्ट होता है, उतना कर देते हैं बस. इसमें लोग आजकल एक्सपर्ट हो चुके हैं. अच्छा अच्छा बोलना, अच्छे से बिहेव करना और सारे गलत काम करना. Hypocrisy. I was relieved. Relieved in the way that now suddenly Jack says, okay, now this is not my responsibility anymore. I can go back to my college and appear in my interviews. I was relieved. I was already thinking about the flight back and the bright California sunshine. She whispered something to Dad. He nodded and left the room. Mummy ne Dad se kuch kaha and Dad went out. Jack, if she was caught up in a fit of coughing and could not speak for some time. If I don't make it. If I don't make it, which means if I die, if I'm not able to come back home alive, if I die, don't be too sad and hurt your health. Focus on your life. Just keep that box you have in the attic with you. And every year at, I think, King Ming, I hope I get it right, just take it out and think about me. I'll be with you always. Mom definitely expects that she won't be alive. After some time, she won't survive this battle against cancer. तो कहती है एक बार साल में मेरे को याद कर लेना और मैं जिंदगी भर तुम्हारे साथ रहूंगी. King Ming was the Chinese festival for the dead. When I was very young, Mom used to write a letter on King Ming to her dead parents back in China, telling them the good news about the past year of her life in America. She would read the letter out loud to me, and if I made a comment about something, she would write it down in the letter too. Then she would fold the letter into a paper crane and release it facing west. We would then watch as the crane flapped its crisp wings on its long journey west, toward the Pacific, toward China, toward the graves of Mom's family. All right. King Ming is a festival for the dead, a Chinese festival for the dead. तो इस दिन मम्मी क्या करती थी? She used to write letter to her parents and release it in that particular direction, expecting it to reach the grave of her parents. This was every year. It had been many years since I last did that with her. हाँ, लेकिन जैक ने ये उसके साथ करना रोक दिया था. रिश्ता ही खत्म हो रखा था जैक के साइड से. मम्मा तो बेचारी चाहती थी. I don't know anything about the Chinese calendar. I said, just rest. Abhi bhi, he's being very insensitive. He says, I don't know things about Chinese calendar. Just rest. Just keep the box with you and open it once in a while. Just open. She began to cough again. It's okay, Mom. I stroked her arm awkwardly. Her cough took over again. Son, Mom loves you. An image from years ago flashed into my memory. Mom saying I, and then putting her hand over her heart. Mom ne actually, I bola. All right, Mom, stop talking. Dad came back and I said that I needed to get to the airport early because I didn't want to miss my flight. He died when my plane was somewhere over Nevada. All right. He was midair when Mom passed away. This entire episode in the hospital tells us one thing about Jack, that he was absolutely insensitive about his mother's ordeal and pain and emotions. उसको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा था कि मॉम के साथ क्या हो रहा है, and she is about to die. Dad aged rapidly after Mom died. Now, one partner gone, the other partner finds it very, very, very difficult to survive. So he aged rapidly. The house was too big for him and had to be sold. My girlfriend Susan and I went to help him pack and clean the place. Susan found the shoebox in the attic. Over shoebox, animals wala, mila unko. The paper menagerie, hidden in the non-insulated darkness of the attic for so long, had become brittle. वो papers जो है ना, वो hardened हो गए थे. मतलब if you touch them, hit them, they will simply break. And the bright wrapping paper patterns had faded. The color of the paper has also faded. I've never seen origami like this, Susan said. Your mom was an amazing artist. वो एक मार्क आया था, garbage and trash. And now Susan comes and she says, your mom was an amazing artist, never seen origami like this. The paper animals did not move. Perhaps whatever magic had animated them stopped when mom died. Mom उसमें ब्रीथ करती थी, तो मॉम की जिंदगी के साथ वो चला करते थे. और perhaps I had only imagined that these paper constructions were once alive. The memory of children could not be trusted. और यहां पे पहली बार जैक हमें डाउट दिखा रहा है कि probably there was no movement, it was just the imagination of a child. It was the first weekend in April, 2 years after mom's death. Susan was out of town on one of her endless trips as a management consultant, and I was home lazily flipping through the TV channels. I paused at a documentary about sharks. और sharks की documentary पे रुक गया. Suddenly, I saw in my mind mom's hands as they folded and refolded tinfoil to make a shark for me while Lahau and I watched. और याद करो, पहली shark तो डूब डाब गई पानी में. tinfoil का बनाया था, तो उसको जैक को वो याद आ रहा है. और Russell, I looked up and saw that a ball of wrapping paper and torn tape was on the floor next to the bookshelf. Okay. I walked over to pick it up for the trash. The ball of paper shifted, unfurled itself, and I saw that it was Lahau, who I hadn't thought about in a very long time. Ross. Mom must have put him back together after I had given up. He was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe it was just that back then my fists were smaller. तो बच्चे की फिस्ट थी, अब बड़े की फिस्ट है, तो टाइगर तो उतना ही बड़ा है, बस अब छोटा लग रहा है. Susan had put the paper animals around our apartment as decoration. और Susan ने वो animals को apartment में सजा के रखा हुआ था. She probably left Lahau in a hidden corner because he looked so shabby. And Lahau चूंकि torn up थे, taped थे, बहुत सारी चीजें, it maybe that toy didn't look as good as others. तो उसको कोने में छुपा रखा था. I sat down on the floor and reached out a finger. Lahau's tail twitched and he pounced playfully. The life is coming back to the animals. I laughed, stroking his back. Lahau purred under my hand. How have you been, old buddy? Lahau stopped playing. He got up, jumped with a feline grace. Feline beta associated with cats. Qualities associated with cats. He got up, jumped with feline grace into my lap and proceeded to unfold himself. And Lahau गोद में आया and proceeded to unfold. मतलब अब वो पेपर का टुकड़ा सामने आएगा. In my lap was a square of creased wrapping paper, the plain side up. It was filled with dense Chinese characters. I had never learned to read Chinese, but I knew the characters for sun. Chinese तो नहीं आता था, लेकिन sun के लिए जो characters Chinese use होते हैं, वो मुझे पता था, and they were at the top. So probably this was a letter addressed to sun, which means Jack. But I knew the characters for sun, and they were at the top where you would expect them in a letter addressed to you, written in mom's awkward, childish handwriting. I went to the computer to check the internet. Today was King Ming. और आज वो दिन था जब मम्मी कहती थी कि यार साल में एक बार मेरे बारे में सोच लेना. I took the letter with me downtown, where I knew the Chinese tour buses stopped. I stopped every tourist asking, can you read Chinese? I hadn't spoken Chinese in so long that I wasn't sure if they understood. अब वो डिस्परेशन है कि मम्मी ने एक लेटर छोड़ा है मेरे लिए, इसमें क्या लिखा हुआ है, चाइनीज इसे आती नहीं है, तो जा रहा है लोगों से पूछ रहा है, डू यू अंडरस्टैंड चाइनीज? बट इसका स्पोकन चाइनीज भी इतना पुअर है that he is not sure if the people are able to understand that. A young woman agreed to help. We sat down on a bench together and she read the letter to me aloud. The language that I had tried to forget for years came back. And I felt the words sinking into me, through my skin, through my bones, until they squeezed tight around my heart. Now this is jamming his heart. अब ये चिट्ठी जो है ना, जो मम्मी ने लिख के छोड़ी हुई इसके लिए, this is going to make him weep and weep and weep. Son, we haven't talked in a long time. You are so angry when I try to touch you that I'm afraid. And I think maybe this pain I feel all the time now is something serious. बेटा मैं जब छूने की भी कोशिश करती हूँ तो तुम भड़क जाते हो, और ये दर्द जो मैं अवॉइड कर रही थी, बार बार बोल रही थी नो बिग डील, शायद ये कुछ सीरियस है. So I decided to write to you. Now, mom has that kind of a feeling that something is not right and she may not survive for a long time. So she decided to write a letter to Jack. I'm going to write in the paper animals I made for you that you used to like so much. The animals will stop moving when I stop breathing. When I die, the animals will stop moving. But if I write to you with all my heart, I leave a little of myself behind on this paper in these words. Then, if you think of me on Xingming, when the spirits of the departed are allowed to visit their families, you will make the parts of myself I leave behind come alive too. But if you think of me on this day, when the spirit of the departed are allowed to visit their families, you will make the parts of myself I leave behind come alive again. That is how the tiger came back to life. The creatures I made for you will again leap and run and pounce, and maybe you will get to see these words then. Because I have to write with all my heart, I need to write to you in Chinese. All this time, I still haven't told you the story of my life. When you were little, I always thought I would tell you the story when you were older, so you could understand. But somehow that chance never came up. By the time Jack grew up, he was already away from his mother. Didn't like her, didn't communicate with her, didn't want to listen to her, didn't want to hear her voice. I was born in 1957 in Sigulu village, Heavy province. Your grandparents were both from very poor peasant families with few relatives, और गरीब आदमी को रिश्तेदार भी नहीं. Only a few years after I was born, the great famine struck China, during which 30 million people died. Oh. The first memory I have was waking up to see my mother eating dirt so that she could fill her belly and leave the last bit of flour for me. And the memory जो मम्मी के जहन में बसी हुई है वो ये है कि she saw her mother eating dirt so that the last bit of flour could be saved for her daughter. That is how moms are. Things got better after that. Sigulu is famous for its Zezi paper craft, and my mother taught me to make paper animals and give them life. That is how she created all those animals. This was practical magic in the life of the village. We made paper birds to chase grasshoppers away from the fields and paper tigers to keep away the mice. For Chinese New Year, my friends and I made red paper dragons. I'll never forget the sight of all those little dragons zooming across the sky overhead, holding up strings of exploding firecrackers to scare away all the bad memories of the past year. You would have loved it. Mummy explain कर रही है कि देखो हम लोग क्या-क्या किया करते थे and paper animals किस लिए बनते थे. Then came the Cultural Revolution in 1966. Neighbor turned on neighbors and brother against brother. Someone remembered that my mother's brother, my uncle, had left for Hong Kong back in 1946 and became a merchant there. Having a relative in Hong Kong meant we were spies and enemies of the people, and we had to be struggled against in every way. अब दिक्कत क्या है? कल्चरल रिवोल्यूशन आया, सोसाइटी बढ़ गई आपस में. And if you were from Hong Kong, or if anybody from your family was in Hong Kong, then you were considered to be a spy and you were to be kind of dealt with. Your poor grandmother, she couldn't take the abuse and threw herself down a well. और grandmother तो suicide commit कर ली, well में कूद गई. Then some boys with hunting muskets dragged your grandfather away one day into the woods, and he never came back. Or grandfather was killed. So up, now this young guy, this child, all alone, orphan. There I was, a 10-year-old orphan. The only relative I had in the world was my uncle in Hong Kong. I snuck away one night and climbed onto a freight goods train that is going south. Down in Guangdong province, a few days later, some men caught me stealing food from a field. When they heard that I was trying to get to Hong Kong, they laughed. It's your lucky day. Our trade is to bring girls to Hong Kong. Now these are child or girl traffickers. Or when this little kid says that I want to go to Hong Kong because I have my uncle there, they laughed. Yare wah, ye to baithe baithe business mil gaya humko. They hid me in the bottom of a truck along with other girls and smuggled us across the border. I said, na, trafficking, smuggling, So smuggled them across the border. We were taken to a basement and told to stand up and look healthy and intelligent for the buyers. Families paid the warehouse a fee and came by to look us over and select one of us to adopt. Basically, adopt kya karna? They were buying so that they could go and do some housework. The Chin family picked me to take care of their 2 boys. I got up every morning at 4 to prepare breakfast. But don't forget, this is just a 10-year-old, maybe 11-year-old, maybe 12-year-old. She gets up at 4 to prepare breakfast for the family. I fed and bathed the boys. I shopped for food. I did the laundry and swept the floors. I followed the boys around and did their bidding. Whatever they asked for. Pani lao, chai lao, ye banao, sab kar rahi bichari. At night, I was locked into a cupboard in the kitchen to sleep. If I was slow or did anything wrong, I was beaten. If the boys did anything wrong, I was beaten. If I was caught trying to learn English, I was beaten. यार कुछ अलग ही जमाना रहा होगा यार. छोटे बच्चे को आप जो है, मतलब ठीक है आपका बच्चा नहीं है किसी और का भी है, बट आप पीट रहे हो, वो भी a girl. Why do you want to learn English? Mr. Chin asked. You want to go to the police? We'll tell the police that you are a mainlander illegally in Hong Kong. Mainlander matlab coming from China. They'd love to have you in their prison. 6 years I lived like this. One day, an old woman who sold fish to me in the morning market pulled me aside. Now some probably luck shined. She told me about American men who wanted Asian wives. If I can cook, clean and take care of my American husband, he'll give me a good life. It was the only hope I had to get married to an American. And that was how I got into the catalog with all those lies and met your father. All those lies, loves to dance, can speak English, something like that. All those lies. It's not a very romantic story, but it is my story. In the suburbs of Connecticut, I was lonely. Your father was kind and gentle with me, and I was very grateful to him. But no one understood me, and I understood nothing because, of course, there was a language barrier. But then you were born. I was so happy when I looked into your face and saw shades of my mother, my father, and myself. I had lost my entire family, all of Sigulu, everything I ever knew and loved. But there you were, and your face was proof that they were real. I hadn't made them up. Oh my God, what memories. She had almost started to kind of hallucinate maybe. कि यार वो थे भी क्या वो लोग. And when she sees her son, she says, okay, they were real. The family was real. Mother, father, everyone was real. She hadn't made them up in her own head. Now I had someone to talk to. I would teach you my language, and we could together remake a small piece of everything that I loved and lost. When you said your first words to me in Chinese that had the same accent as my mother and me, I cried for hours. Language. When I made the first Zazi animals for you and you laughed, I felt there was no worries in the world. जब वो paper menagerie बननी शुरू हुई है, and the child laughed, mom thought there's nothing to worry in the world. You grew up a little, and now you could even help your father and me talk to each other. अब वो translate कर रहा है दोनों के बीच में बैठ के. I was really at home now. I finally found a good life. I wished my parents could be here so that I could cook for them and give them a good life too. But my parents were no longer around. You know what the Chinese think is the saddest feeling in the world? It's for a child to finally grow the desire to take care of his parents only to realize that they were long gone. For those of us who still have our parents with us, I'll tell you, I lost my father on the day of Holi. And the one thing that you miss is the voice. So as long as they are here, please do everything in your powers to keep them healthy and happy. Son, I know that you do not like your Chinese eyes, which are my eyes. I know that you do not like your Chinese hair, which is my hair. But can you understand how much joy your very existence brought to me? And can you understand how it felt when you stopped talking to me and won't let me talk to you in Chinese? I felt I was losing everything all over again. Now a desperate mom, she says, I know you don't like the Chinese part of yourself, which of course comes from my side. And I don't think you even realize what I go through when I'm not able to speak to you, when I'm not allowed to speak Chinese, and I don't understand what you say. Now again, that lack of communication starts to broaden the gap between the son and the mother. तो बेटा तो कॉलेज जा रहा है, गर्लफ्रेंड भी है, सब कुछ हैप्पी हैप्पी हो रहा है. Mom is all alone and all lonely. I felt I was losing everything all over again. Why won't you talk to me, son? The pain makes it hard to write. The young woman handed the paper back to me. I could not bear to look into her face. Now this is again embarrassment. How about the way he treated his mother when she was alive? Without looking up, I asked for help in tracing out the character for I on the paper below Mom's letter. I wrote the character again and again on the paper, intertwining my pen strokes with her words. The young woman reached out and put a hand on my shoulder. Then she got up and left, leaving me alone with my mother. Following the creases, I refolded the paper back into Lohau. I cradled him in the crook of my arm, and as he purred, we began to walk home. And now Jack realizes what he had done to his mother. But he can't do anything about it. He's probably remorseful, and he brings Lohau back to life, and they're walking back together. But Mom is gone. Maybe now on he'll think of his mother every single day, not only on that day of Chinese festival for the dead. A wonderful, amazing story, a lesson for all of us in terms of how we treat our parents. Do not let the communication break. Keep finding ways to communicate. Keep telling them what you feel, what you mean, and as far as possible, do not hurt them. Critical appreciation. The story is an emotional tale of Jack, a boy of mixed American and Chinese heritage. The title is symbolic and reflects the deeper meaning of the story. Ken Liu uses the stream of consciousness technique to present Jack's memories and experiences with his mother. The narrative is non-linear, moving between different events from the past and present. Unlike the usual parent-child conflict seen in many stories, here it is Jack who distances himself from his mother. Mother does not, Jack does. The first-person narration makes the story more personal and impactful. Liu effectively uses personification and symbolism, especially through the paper animals, to convey emotions and themes of identity, love, and acceptance. Identity, love, and acceptance, and of course, discrimination that Jack faces at the hands of the boys at school, especially Mark. Jack, a decent guy, actually. Loving and caring, sensitive and emotional, confused about his identity. When Mark came home, that is when the problem started occurring. Influenced by society and racism, mature and responsible in the end. He brings Lohau back to life and they walk back together. Jack's mother, of course, loving and caring, artistic and creative. Origami, never seen an art like that. Strong and courageous, sacrificing and selfless, patient and resilient, endures hardships without giving up. You can figure it out from the letter itself, and also the way she was postponing her visit to the hospital even while having so much pain. And these are the words that you can pick from the free material list, which you must vocabulary download, and this is where you get the free material actually. And thank you very much for being with us, for staying for so long, and a wonderful story that we had, the paper Menagerie. Please read it again, and please go to your parents and tell them you love them. Thank you.